A lot of this comes down to in either of these scenarios where somebody either leaves for some amount of money or where somebody leaves to start their own firm, it comes down to how much do they believe in the future, in their future, and in your firm's future. I'm Michael Mogill, founder and CEO of Crisp, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. Crisp started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer.
This is Jessica, Head of Coaching Strategy at Crisp, and today we're flipping the script for another special edition episode to get Michael's take on why top talent leaves and why it's rarely just about money, how to build a cohesive culture that unites your team, and why not all feedback is created equal and how to focus on what truly moves the needle.
I don't know where this came from, in what business class, or maybe it was on BuzzFeed, or worst of all, LinkedIn. That someone said, oh, you should have an open door policy to just listen to everybody. And the problem with the open door policy is that once you put that policy in place, you will never get anything done ever again.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Welcome back, another AMMA.
I'm excited to be back. I'm actually cracking up at just what we were just talking about. I had planned on shaving today before the podcast, right? Just didn't want to show up here all scruffy. But then you said that at least I wore a nice sweater, in which case I was like, okay, well, that kind of balances it out, right?
Right.
It cancels out the
scruffy.
The scruffy, right? Because if I showed up here in a t-shirt and the scruff, then the listeners would be like, just doesn't give a shit anymore. Right, because I don't even know what percentage of listeners watch this. They could. Listen, I know a lot of people watching
on
YouTube.
I know, they actually do.
I get messages, people like, I watch every episode. And I'm like, look, man, that's why I've got to start getting the styling right, the lighting right,
Be polished.
Exactly. That's why I started working out, because people told me they started watching the podcast. That's the reason, right?
Never knew that.
Exactly. Well, we just got back from a family trip, a little family tradition with Disney with the kids.
Yeah.
And we learned that our oldest child is an adrenaline junkie.
Yes, she has met the height requirement for probably 75% of the rides now.
Correct. So we started out in kind of the Toy Story land, and we rode the little Slinky ride, the roller coaster. This is kind of fun, right? I'm like, okay, this is good. I like it. This is fun.
She could ride that one last year. That was like her ease in.
Then we're walking through the park. She looks up and she's like, she sees the Tower of Terror. She's like, what's that? And I look over at you and I'm like, oh, hell no. Right?
Yeah, you don't do heights.
I don't do the drops rides, right? Roller coasters, okay, no problem. But and I've been on the Tower of Terror, right? When I was a kid, I went. I even got a shirt that says I survived the Tower of Terror, which means I don't have to go on the Tower of Terror ever again. So I look over at you and I'm like, you're taking her on this one, right? I'm going to stay with the youngest.
Uh-huh.
Okay? I'm going to hang out with her. So you guys ended up going on this ride.
Oh, my God.
And we were a little worried. We're like, she's going to get scared because...
She's so small, she gets airtime.
Yeah.
Like, she literally floats and comes back down, and, come to find out that was her favorite part.
Exactly. Well, and you guys rode it not once.
Oh, but twice. She loved it so much, we went twice. And in between there, I think I did, the Aerosmith ride?
Oh, yeah.
So I did 3 in a row, and I was like, wow, I can't do this like I used to. I'm going to have to sit out the next one.
Which you missed an amazing ride, because that Guardians of the Galaxy ride is, I think, the single best ride at Disney.
Well, you know what? I've done that one, so I can say I've done that one.
You have done it.
Yes.
You have done it. You've been a little
sick after.
After riding the Tower of Terror twice and then the Aerosmith ride. But we went on that the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, which is just so cool. This thing is so much fun. And then you get on, and I learned that they play like one of 6 songs. Like depending when like each time you ride, there's like a different song that plays. And the one that came on was just absolutely perfect. Okay, so like here, I am got it queued up right here. Here we go. Oh, yeah. This comes on.
The one of 6 songs that she did know.
This is like the one song she knew, okay? You guys know this, all right? Tears for Fears. Everybody wants to rule the world. And because she knew this from Despicable Me 4. They played at the end of the movie. It's like almost like the end credits scene where they're all singing in prison, and it's like everybody wants to rule the world. And so we blast off. This song is playing in our like headrest on this roller coaster, and she's singing along like every single word of the song as we're like, I don't know, saving the galaxy. I don't even know what the hell we were doing, but it was a roller coaster. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun.
And then on Avatar, I'm about to throw up again.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
That one
like
is so immersive.
The Pandora
but all
ride.
I hear the whole time, I love this.
She loved it. Well, it's not, you don't even go anywhere. It's like one of those like simulator rides.
Oh, yeah.
So it's funny because she was only interested, she's like, is it a ride or is it a roller coaster?
Oh, yeah.
She's like, I want to go on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Right? Because now like she knew what roller coasters were. And that was the very first time that she really had been on rides like that.
Oh, yeah. First time.
The youngest was not interested in any of this. She just wanted to meet the princesses and see the animals, especially at the animal kingdom. So
Girl loves Lion King.
She loves Lion King.
Yeah.
She absolutely loves Lion King. I remember we were walking through one of the parks at one point, and there was like a movie poster for that movie Mufasa.
Oh, yeah.
And every time, because it was on like one of those like
rotating
LED like rotating walls, so every time it came up, she's like, Lion King, Daddy, Mommy, Lion King. We're like, okay, it's awesome, right?
Yeah.
And then we got to be in. Went to the Lion King show.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that 3 out of 4 family members got to be in the show?
Guess who was not in the show?
Okay, I know exactly who was not in the show.
You're looking at the person who was not in the show.
Okay, so they asked me to go up on stage, and I guess we had to make different animal noises, which is awesome, right? Like, because you could just go up there in front of an entire crowd of people, and they say, like, okay, what sound am I making? And they're like,
a hogwart.
Oh, the warthog, right? Like the little snort.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it on this podcast, right? Because that was only at Disney World in front of my kids. But I'm like, why couldn't I get like some other like a roar, or like they're like, okay, we want to like snort from your nose. It was a fun experience. We will be back, and maybe next time I'll ask you to go up on stage and snort like a warthog.
Maybe
not though.
Maybe
you
not
probably
though.
Planned it. You probably planned that.
I was relieved.
I'm thinking, what are the odds?
Relieved.
Right? We get
but
to be
the
in the
girls,
Lion King show.
they just went right out. They did the show, and I'm like, where's this energy at the Game Changer Summit?
Oh yeah, they gave them like maracas and stuff, and they got basically they were like all smiling and walking around. It was like the end of the show. I was like, okay, this is awesome, right?
But all I could think was, where's this energy at the Game Changer Summit?
I know, because it's funny. Leading up to our conferences, they're like, man, we're going to be on stage. We're going to be great. We're going to welcome everybody. We're going to say, welcome to the Game Changer Summit. And it sounds great. And we like even practice with them, and then we rehearse. And then on the day of the conference, like literally like 5 minutes before, they're like, we don't want to do it. Well, thanks, kids. I'm trying to get these tax write-offs here. I need you to go on stage.
Maybe we just need to have a Lion King themed Game Changer Summit.
If we had Lion King, yes.
Yeah.
We
that's
just bring
the answer to it
all
all.
the Cirque du Soleil people from the show at Disney World, and then maybe just give them maracas. That'd be good.
Yeah.
All right, Jessica, let's do this thing. Let's do the AMMA. If you're tuning in, you guys submit the questions. We answer them here on the show. Questions about anything relating to growing a law firm, scaling a law firm, leadership, culture, hiring, marketing, etc., anything like that. And you text us at 404-531-7691 with your questions. Jessica compiles them. And if this is your first time tuning into an AMMA, great. I hope you like it. I hope it has value to you. And if it has value to you, all we ask is that you go and leave us a review on either Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It helps us reach more people when we got a lot of great reviews, right? I think we're one of the highest rated, I think maybe the highest rated legal podcast, or certainly the most listened to legal podcast now, coming up on maybe by the time this podcast comes out, we've already crossed 5 years. So 5 years of changing the game, right? Who would have thought? Other episodes we do are interviews, like one-on-one, bring on a guest, and then the encore editions, we bring back the most popular episodes of the podcast. We've done hundreds of these episodes. So if you're just tuning in now, we'll go back and listen to all 300 plus episodes.
Yeah.
So with that, let's get to it. Jessica, what do we got this week?
All right. So I think the people have listened, because every time I ask a question, you're always like, I wish I had more context. I wish I had more context. So we are starting to get a lot more context on these questions. So question number 1. Hi, Michael. I'm a longtime listener and run an immigration practice with 6 attorneys and 18 support staff. We've grown rapidly over the past few years, but I'm struggling with attorney retention. 2 of my associates left in the past year, one for a competitor who only offered $5,000 more in salary, and another to start their own practice. We offer competitive pay and good benefits, but I'm starting to realize that might not be enough. What am I missing?
Here's the thing I would say about this one. I can give you an answer, and one, you're going to be like, okay, makes sense. And then the other answer you're not going to like. If you have somebody who left for a competing law firm for $5,000, you could look at it and say, look, maybe money was the main thing that mattered to them, right? And if they were going to leave over such a trivial sum, then maybe it wasn't trivial to them, or maybe, in some ways that's wasn't someone who was a great fit for your firm. I don't know. You could make up all sorts of reasons and excuses. It doesn't make them true. The person who left to start their own firm, it's going to happen, right? If there's a reason you run your own law firm, right? Because you probably left to start your own firm at some point. And if somebody decides they want to go bet on themselves, and you have somebody that's just super ambitious and entrepreneurial, they're going to do that at some point, right? Otherwise, they're going to live a life of regret. That doesn't mean their firm is going to be successful. It just means that they're choosing to place a bet on themselves. And I think the best thing you can do is just be supportive of them and, hope they succeed. And, there could be great opportunities to collaborate in the future.
Yeah, keep an abundance mindset.
So this is the one you're like, okay, I understand. Now, here's the answer you're not going to like. If somebody's leaving for $5,000, right, there is something you're missing. And it could be that it sucks to work at your law firm, because if somebody has an opportunity to make a little bit more money somewhere else, and let's say that somewhere else is a lot easier to work at, right? Like maybe there's just less accountability. Maybe they're like, look, man, I can make more money. Your firm, I got to hit all these KPIs. I got to hit all these targets and these key performance indicators. I got to do all this work to make my money, and I can go somewhere else and make a little bit more, but they're not going to ask anything of me. Who could blame them, right? Maybe they can go somewhere else, make a little bit more, and there is no accountability. Maybe they even let them work from home, right? Let them do whatever, right? I probably just trigger somebody, I'm sure. And then if that's the case, then you have to consider, okay, well, do we make it easier to work at our firm, for example, right? Or if you are, trying to set a high standard, reinforce a standard, maybe even elevate the standard at your firm, and you're like, look, this is our culture. This is how we do things. Like, we're going to commit to a level of excellence. We're going to work hard, and that's going to attract certain people, and that's going to repel others. And this might be an example of it repelling somebody, right? It just may not be a good fit for them. That doesn't make them a bad person.
Right.
It just may not be a good fit. There could also be other cultural issues where, when I say sucks to work at your law firm, there's the sucks that I just said where law firm is yeah, those people are just soft and weak. And I mean, that's easy to say. Or maybe it's just not a great experience. Maybe they just don't feel valued. Maybe they don't feel respected. Maybe they don't have a lot of clarity and direction on how to be successful in their role. Maybe they didn't get great training and onboarding. It could be so many other things that the thing that you're missing, a good way to find out is just to ask, right?
Yeah.
And to ask them okay, so at any time there's an exit interview, it's what do they got to lose, right? So just get that feedback. It can give you insight into what you could do better in the future, right? But I think a lot of this comes down to, in either of these scenarios where somebody either leaves for some amount of money or where somebody leaves to start their own firm, it comes down to how much do they believe in the future, in their future, and in your firm's future, right? So meaning that in their future at your firm. And do they see the firm as moving in a direction where that's a future they want to align with and stick with, or maybe not, right? Maybe they don't know what the future vision is of the firm. Maybe they're not sold on it. Maybe they're not excited about it. Maybe they don't care. The role of a leader, I think many times, is to keep people excited about the future of the business. Sometimes you'll see, it's interesting, and I won't name companies because we're trying to, you're telling me not to get political on this podcast, but in the stock market, there's companies that can take a hit, and when a company's stock price goes down, there's sometimes the sentiment that everybody believes that this company is doomed to fail, or the company's overvalued, or whatever. And then sometimes that can be the case. Or sometimes it's an emotional reaction in the market where if you truly believe in a company, and if you believe in the company's future, 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, you wouldn't sell that company's stock because you believe in the future of that business, and the future is going to be greater than what it is today. So I think that's why it's so important. And you see this, that sometimes the stock market is so emotionally driven. It's not necessarily even driven by actual true key financial metrics. Also the economy is very different than the stock market. Financial health of a company is sometimes also very different than their actual stock price. These things don't go hand in hand, right? So, but it's your role as a leader, I think, to cast this vision for the future and to ensure that your team is excited about that future. Something we've done is, why wait for the exit interview? Is you start integrating stay interviews. So if you want to speak to those.
Yeah, but I mean, it's exactly what you said is really getting a pulse on people and understanding, why are you staying? Why are you still here? And we have targets every quarter to conduct a certain number of them. Usually it's our head of people doing that, but to truly understand everyone's experience, because the thing is, nothing breaks my heart more than when someone leaves over something that was like so fixable. And it was something so minute, but they never felt that they could speak up, or they never felt that they could say something. And so that's the point of a stay interview, is understanding like what keeps you here, what is important to you. And you would be surprised. It's not always money.
So I think that's the best thing. It's just, I think start integrating that feedback loop early, so it doesn't get to a situation where someone's going to leave over $5,000, right? Or at least if it got to that point, you at least know that they came to you first, or that you had some pulse on where this person's head was at. And then for the ones that are going to leave and start their own firms, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. I have yet to speak to a successful firm owner that hasn't had that happen to them.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, they're all going to leave and I'm going to like train my competition. But that's not true.
No.
Right? Not at all. It's no different than like what you did when you started your practice, right? You probably left another firm to do it, like I was saying earlier. Or you can create a structure within the firm where there's a career path, or there's a way in which they can continue to grow that's valuable for them, that, can satisfy that, entrepreneurial itch that they may have, right? Maybe it's giving them a level of autonomy over a certain department within the firm and allowing them to essentially be an entrepreneur, like an intrapreneur within the business. I think there's a rising amount of intrapreneurs where we can have people that are entrepreneurial, even within our company, that can have autonomy over certain decision-making and be able to drive direction and strategy and so on. And some of them they don't want to go out and start their own companies, but they're entrepreneurial by nature, right? They don't want to run a company or deal with a company. But I think it's also important for them to like satisfy their entrepreneurial needs. And if you can provide that opportunity within your company, there could be a lot of great intrapreneurs.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to question number 2. Michael, thanks for all your insights. My business partner and I have an estate planning firm. We're experiencing a culture divide between our senior staff and younger team members. The senior team values face time and more hierarchical structure, while our younger attorneys and paralegals push for more flexibility and collaborative decision-making. How have you bridged generational differences in workplace expectations?
Ooh, this is a touchy one. Okay. Look, you see this happen at a lot of different businesses. I don't think it's just exclusive to law firms. You have an older generation and then a younger generation, and the older generation does things one way and the younger generation comes in and does things another, and perhaps they sometimes struggle to understand one another. It's like, to give like a stereotype, a lot of times, the younger generation looks at the older generation and says that they're slow and they're not adapting to like technology and they're just working slowly. And then the older generation looks at the younger generation and says, well, they're lazy or they don't like to have face-to-face conversations.
Yeah.
Right. But you've got to be very mindful of this, because you can't have two cultures within your company, right? And within your law firm. Like that's just, I think that's a recipe for disaster. Right? You can't say, okay, we have these two different generations of employees, and one has this culture and other has this culture, but you have one culture in your business. And if you allow two, then it just means you have a misalignment in your culture, period. And I don't think that age should have anything to do with it. It is, what are your standards? What is your culture? And I'll give you an example. Like, one of our core values is better than yesterday. And what that means is that we are of a student mindset, and everybody should always be learning and evolving their skills and evolving their capabilities and be better today than they were a year ago, a month ago, even than yesterday, a day ago. So if you're younger, there's an expectation that you are evolving and adapting and learning, let's say, AI and like ways to be able to integrate AI into your workflow and be more efficient and more effective. And if you're older, there's an expectation that you're learning how to adopt and integrate AI into your workflow as well, right? It's not just because you old people with a lot of experience, right? You don't have to learn new things or doing these workflows or whatever. It's no different. The reason why I say it doesn't matter, the age is just like a number, right? It's funny, like when you look back at teen movies from like the 90s and even the 80s, and in their definition of what a 30-year-old was, what a 40-year-old was, it was like these old people. And now you look at like 30s and 40s, like, look, they're young.
Yes.
It's young. Like they don't even look the same.
Yeah.
When we find that there's people that are older within our business that are like super passionate, super excited about, I mean, they're the ones sometimes leading the charge on integrating technology and workflow efficiencies and so on. And sometimes like the young ones are like, how do I click a mouse and how do I do a keyboard, like whatever. I only learned on touching screens, right? Like, I learned on iPads when I was a baby, right? They're like, I don't know how to use a mouse.
Right. Yeah.
It goes both ways. And all I'm saying is that you should establish, here is how we operate as a team, okay? This is how we collaborate. This is how we work together. This is how we provide updates to one another. This is how we're evolving our skills and our capabilities. this is how, like, our tech stack, here's where we're going. It is, you set that culture. It should be one culture rather than viewing it as, how do I get the old ones to get along with the young ones? And somehow, like, it shouldn't be oil and vinegar.
It's great. And you see a lot of mentorship opportunities in that as well, both ways. Yeah.
Exactly. Sometimes you gotta, the old ones will be providing the wisdom. The young ones will hold their cane.
Oh my God.
Just allow them, walk them through the office. I'm just kidding, man. I'm just making jokes. I'm the old one now, right? It's so crazy. Like, when we started, I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we started the company, and I felt like, man, we would hire people. They'd all be like older than me, and like, man, I feel awkward leading these people. And nowadays we hire people, and I feel like, I'm like, what year did they graduate college? Right.
Yeah.
Like, wow. We just had coming up on almost like a 20-year reunion. So it's one day the young ones will realize they'll be the old ones, right? So you got to respect your elders too, kiddos.
Alrighty, kiddos. Moving on to question number 3. Michael, I listen to your podcast every morning before work. I've grown my personal injury firm from solo to 22 team members. I just implemented quarterly reviews and created an open door policy, but I'm getting bombarded by issues, and I feel like I'm still catching things too late. I'm drowning in complaints about our coffee brand and office temperature, and that was just last week. How do you know what feedback to take action on and what to ignore?
Oh, buddy.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
we've been there.
I'll tell you your first mistake here.
As that open door
policy.
Yeah.
I don't know where this came from, in what business class, or maybe it was on BuzzFeed, or worst of all, LinkedIn, right? That someone said, oh, you should have an open door policy to just listen to everybody, right? Well, the problem with the open door policy is that once you put that policy in place, you will never get anything done ever again, right? Your productivity will drop to zero, because now you got the minutes. You got a minute. Of course you have a minute. You have an open door policy, and people can come to you and bitch and complain and share all their problems with you. Like, problems in the office, problems at home, problems that they anticipate in the future, right? That have not even taken place yet. And it's like, what are we doing spinning on this rock that's floating through space? Like, what do you think, boss? And I come to you with all those problems because you said you had an open door policy. So that's a massive mistake. And by the way, it's not to say you shouldn't get feedback. There's a healthy balance here. You can have, one of the things we instilled years ago was saying, okay, you can have office hours, right? Essentially, you say, okay, from this time to this time, if you have anything you need, like, pop in, more than happy to help you, right? And pro tip, structure office hours towards the end of the day, like 4 o'clock, and it's not for the reason you think. It's when you do it at the start of the day, if somebody gets in and they have a problem, they got early day office hours. But if your office hours aren't until the end of the day, then what we found is 99.9% of the problems were solved by that time. Someone's not gonna like sit on this thing the whole day, right? Like most people won't, at least. So you can still do office hours without having like an all day open door policy. And then also, I think, to be intentional, because you have to also, I think you want to lead by examples. You want to encourage like productivity and focus and so on. So if something is not on the calendar, a lot of times, like if you again, I'm happy to meet with anyone. Just set a time to meet, right? Let's put it on the calendar, because if you're going about your day and you have these calls, these meetings, these priorities, et cetera, and I pull you out, right? Like, I better have something really good and very important. Otherwise, I'm going to distract you and throw you off on your day, right? So you have to be mindful of that both ways. The other thing is, in terms of the feedback you're getting, what was it? It was things like coffee. They don't like the taste?
Yeah, I didn't like the brand.
Oh, they didn't like the brand?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe the brand was not, environmentally friendly, or maybe they don't donate a pair of coffee beans.
We asked them to pay for the coffee.
What's that?
Then ask them to pay for the coffee.
Yeah, you bring the brand they want, right? We had this happen years back. I remember when we got a Keurig and we had those K-Cups. This is like years ago. At the old office, we had like it wasn't even like a commercial coffee maker. It was just like the home Keurig K-Cup. And somebody wrote in the feedback that they're like, these K-Cups are not environmentally friendly, and we should get the ones where you can like wash them and like
reuse them.
Yeah. So we're like, okay, great idea. Yeah, let's do it. Who's going to wash them, right? Who's going to clean them? And the person who suggested this was like, I'll do it. Well, before you know it, they were spending hours of their day cleaning K-Cups. And we're like, wow, what a great investment. So just be careful before you go too far down that path.
Just also know you will never please everyone.
Oh, absolutely not. I got the ultimate example of this. Okay? The ultimate example that you will not make everybody happy. Years ago, we decided that we would surprise our entire team during an all-hands meeting. Like, so we meet every month, and we would surprise them and say, guys, we're going to do it game show style. Look under your seat and pull out what's under your seat. And we gave everybody $100 bill, right? Imagine you just come into the office one day, you're going in for a meeting, and then someone tells you to reach under your seat and you pull out $100, right? You'd be like, great, right?
Great.
Like, happy. What if I were to tell you that did not make everybody happy? Because some people looked at it and said, look, why does this person get $100? They just started and I have been here for X number of years, right? And then another person said, $100? So that ain't that much money. And then another person was like, what are they trying to buy us off? And I'm like, man, I was just trying to do something nice.
Right.
Give me the $100 back, right? Nobody wanted to give them back, okay? It's funny. They don't want to give them back.
Yeah.
But my point here is that if the question is, how do you separate signal from noise, right? Essentially, because you're going to get all sorts of feedback. Like, they don't like the coffee, then the room's too cold. Look, people have been telling me the room's too cold for almost a decade, right? Come to a Crisp summit or workshop, they're like, it's so cold in here, right? I'm like, guys, I read your feedback. I know what you're saying, okay?
It's not changing.
We ain't changing the temperature. Surprise! And you're thinking, why? Why would he just ignore our feedback, right? And the answer is that we tried this experiment before. You think you're the first person to suggest that? First of all, if I'm trying to be economical, it's more expensive to cool the room than to not, cool the room and just keep it at the temperature, like 72 or whatever, right? So it actually costs us more money and energy to cool the room to that frigid temperature. And there was a time where we didn't do this. And what would happen is people would get back from lunch and they see their eyes drifting and they get all sleepy because they're so comfortable, okay? The goal is not comfort when you're learning, right? Like when you're learning at a workshop, an event, like you're not trying to get all snuggled up like it's time for bed and a nice little warm blanket, right? Let's give you a little eye mask, right? And let's rub your feet here. It's you need to be alert, right? The goal is to be alert and energized. If you still don't agree, blame Christy because she's the one who told me to do this. And I was like, Christy, I don't want to freeze them out. She's like, well, they're going to fall asleep otherwise, right? So you can have a nice little blanket for your feet. We do pass out blankets. But if the goal is to learn and be energized and alert, and look, there's going to be still people listening to this and saying, I still disagree. It should not be that cold.
Again, can't please everyone.
Can't please everyone. And I also say it's good for your mental toughness, right? If you can't deal with a little bit of cold, how are you going to deal with all the challenges that exist out there for your law firm? And when it comes to growing and scaling, what's a little bit of cold to you, right? Sometimes you got to experience hard things. And a lot of people don't like the cold. And that's exactly why we do it, right? So, and if you're, we actually went the other way one time. When we didn't do this, I think actually it's funny. The AC was out during a workshop. And you know what we got in that feedback? They said it's too hot. Okay. I'm like, wow, right? So maybe we'll create maybe in the future there's going to be pods that people can sit in and they can have a temperature controlled for their specific, it's like an 8 sleep, but for a workshop or an office where you can change the temperature of your chair to align with your body and your circadian rhythm or whatever.
So
I don't
cozy
know.
you go to sleep.
Correct.
Yeah.
So back to this. I don't even know how I got there, but when you talk about feedback and separating signal from noise, here's my view. If your goal is to run a successful and growing business, and not all feedback is created equal, I believe in a meritocracy, okay? And you say, what about a democracy? A meritocracy, which essentially means, I'll give you an example. Let's say they have missed their KPIs, and their targets every single month for the last 3 or 4 months, right? And they're providing feedback. And then you have another person who consistently hits their targets and is on point, aligns with the core values, meets the standards and expectations, and they provide feedback. Which one do we weight more heavily, right? So essentially it says that not all feedback is weighted equally. It's like we read all the feedback, but that doesn't mean that just because somebody submitted, that's what we're going to do. I mean, this comes back years ago. There was, we had our weekly internal report. We still keep it to this day, and people can submit their feedback. And one person submitted that they wanted a couch in one of the offices, and then another person submitted something that was around
a ping pong table.
A ping pong table. They wanted that, and then another one wanted a beer keg, right? And then somebody suggested a software platform that could make the workflow more efficient, right? To be able to increase output and productivity. Which one do you think we listen to? The ping pong table, of course. I'm just kidding. But yes, not all feedback is created equally. I think you have to also weigh it in terms of of somebody's level of accountability as well within your organization. I mean, you could read everything, but it's essentially saying that not every piece of feedback is something you need to necessarily take action on. So it's no different than we collect surveys every single time we do basically anything at Crisp. When we do like client workshops, on-site trainings, even video shoots, calls, etc. And when a workshop happens, let's say there's hundreds of firms in a workshop, and they're going to be rating the workshop. Now, this most recent workshop, I think, is probably the highest rated one we've ever done, right? So it's on a scale of 1 to 10. I think it's like a 9.8 or 9.9, right? And we see most of the ratings come through, and most of them are 10s. But then, out of, 300 people, like someone will submit a 6, and they will have a lot of feedback. There's aspects of the feedback that are extremely valid, and we pay attention to everything. I don't care what you rate it. I want to read your feedback and I want to learn from it. It doesn't mean you're wrong, but if the person who rates the workshop a 6 and says they don't like the format, and then they are like 0.5% of the feedback, and the other 99.5% say they loved it, well, then the likelihood of us changing the format would not be very high, because the 99.5% said they absolutely loved it, right? So if we were to change the format, we'd actually be going against what they want.
Yep. I mean, you hit it. It's like not every piece of feedback is created equally. And also, a lot of times feedback becomes just like a dumping ground, and it creates more work for you. So it's kind of even going back to the weekly internal report when somebody was like, I want a couch. And I was like, great, go measure it. Send me 3 options. Here's your budget. I put the work back on them, and guess what? I never got that information back. So they never got a couch.
Still waiting on the measurements.
Still waiting on the measurements from 2 offices ago. So definitely not happening. Same thing even with the ping pong table. I was like, okay, great. Go find some options. Here's the budget. Here's the measurements. But when you put the work back on them, they're like, maybe it's not that important. So also realizing that you don't have to take action on everything, like you said.
Correct. And sometimes I think you can get better feedback from somebody if you ask them, okay, well, what feedback you want to provide? And then what role would you play in the solution? Right? Like if it's something you believe is important. So if it's someone saying, well, Susie over here is always, is always complaining, or she's very difficult to work with. And we think, okay, great. Well, we have adults here, right? Okay. So what would it look like to facilitate a conversation between the two of you so you can work out your differences?
Yeah, that used to be your favorite thing. You just forward the email.
Oh, yeah. If somebody sent me an email complaining about somebody, I just loop the other person in on the email and say, look, sounds like you guys have some things to talk about. I'll leave you to it.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Let me know if you need any support. Great. Just work it out. I'm sure there's going to be some people that are shocked and offended when they hear this, but I think that if your goal is to work with adults, then you have to treat adults like adults. And that also means that you put it back on them a lot of times to work out their differences and find ways to collaborate and solve problems and think critically, so that you're not having to burn every single calorie in your brain to solve their problems.
Yeah.
So
completely agree. You
got to find the healthy balance.
Right. My favorite
like,
word.
That is my favorite word. I'm going to get tattooed. They're going to dig me up one day, years from now, in a little time capsule, and they're going to be like, what's that on his wrist? Balance. And they're like, no. They're going to like move the dust off.
Yeah.
And it's going to say beast mode.
All right. We will see you next time.
All right. Until next time.
You've been listening to the Game Changing Attorney podcast with Michael Mogill. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that we can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of Michael's book absolutely free at gamechangingattorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot Michael a text at 404-531-7691 and ask him any question you'd like. You might just hear the answer on the next episode. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it will help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on this episode, see the show notes in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.